The first laugh cut through the briefing room like a blade. It came from a full-bird colonel who had been in uniform longer than most of the room had been alive. He leaned back in his chair, eyes scanning the young woman standing quietly near the wall, her uniform plain, her rank patch intentionally unremarkable. "You?" he said, pointing at her without bothering to learn her name. "I asked for experienced leadership, not a lost junior officer." The room went still, and she did not move. No one there knew that the woman being dismissed had once commanded operations that never made the news. No one knew she had signed orders that men twice that colonel's age had followed without question. And no one knew that, by regulation and authority, she outranked him completely. She had learned long ago that power did not need to announce itself. Her name was Captain Elena Ward. At least that was the name on her uniform that morning. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, posture calm, eyes steady, breathing slow. She had been assigned to the base 3 days earlier under special orders that instructed her to observe, assess, and remain silent unless necessary. The base was struggling. Command cohesion was fractured, morale was low, and recent training failures had raised red flags all the way up the chain of command. That was why she had been sent. Not as a figurehead, not as a guest, but as a corrective force. The colonel continued. "We are preparing for a joint exercise with allied units," he said. "Mistakes will not be tolerated. I expect professionalism. I expect competence." His eyes flicked back to her. "And I expect junior officers to listen, not stand around pretending they belong." A few officers shifted in their seats. A lieutenant glanced at Elena with sympathy. A major looked down at his notes. No one spoke up. Challenging a colonel publicly was career suicide. Elena remained silent. She had been trained for moments like this. Not in classrooms, but in command centers lit by red lights and consequences. She had learned that ego often revealed itself before incompetence did. After the briefing, the colonel intercepted her in the hallway. "Captain," he said, stopping just short of her path. "You were quiet in there." "Yes, sir." "Good," he replied. "That is usually best for officers at your stage. Stay out of the way, and you might learn something." "Yes, sir," she said again, voice even. He walked away satisfied. What he did not know was that her assignment did not come from his command. It came from the Defense Oversight Directorate, signed by a general whose call he would never ignore. What he did not know was that her true rank was temporarily concealed under a provision used only for sensitive evaluations. And what he did not know was that his leadership was already under review. Over the next few days, Elena observed everything. She watched training exercises where orders were unclear and corrections came too late. She watched enlisted personnel hesitate, not from fear of the task, but from confusion about who was in charge. She watched officers argue quietly while pretending unity in front of subordinates. She took notes, not physical ones. She carried everything in her memory, cataloged and precise. The colonel continued to mock her presence. During a planning session, he interrupted her once more. "Captain Ward," he said loudly, "do you have something to contribute, or are you just here to decorate the room?" A few nervous laughs followed. Elena met his eyes. "With respect, sir, I believe the current plan leaves your left flank exposed during Phase 3. The room froze. The colonel stared at her, stunned that she had spoken. "That is incorrect," he snapped. "This plan has been reviewed by my staff." "Yes, sir," she said calmly. "Your staff reviewed it assuming standard response timing. The terrain delays reinforcement by 12 minutes. That creates a gap." Silence stretched. The colonel's face hardened. "Captain," he said, voice sharp, "you are out of line. Sit down." She did not argue. She sat. But several officers exchanged glances. They had seen the same issue. They had been afraid to mention it. The exercise the next day confirmed her concern. The simulated enemy force exploited the gap exactly as she had predicted. The failure was undeniable. The colonel was furious. He blamed logistics. He blamed communication. He blamed everyone but himself. That evening, an unmarked vehicle arrived at the base. The colonel was summoned to the command conference room. He assumed it was damage control. Instead, he found Elena standing at the head of the table. She was not wearing her captain's insignia. She was wearing a colonel's eagle, and above it, a small pin that marked her as an operational commander with direct oversight authority. The room went dead silent. She spoke first. "Colonel Harris," she said evenly, "please have a seat." His face drained of color. "I believe," she continued, "there has been some confusion regarding my role here." He opened his mouth, then closed it. "My name is Colonel Elena Ward," she said. "I am assigned by directive to evaluate leadership readiness at this installation." She slid a folder across the table. "Your performance over the past 6 months has raised concerns. Your response to feedback, treatment of subordinate officers, and refusal to address known vulnerabilities are among them." He stared at the folder as if it might explode. "I mocked you," he said quietly. "Yes," she replied. "You did. I was wrong." "Yes," she said again. "You were." There was no anger in her voice, no triumph, just clarity. "I did not correct you earlier," she continued, "because authority that must shout is already weak. I wanted to see how you led when you believed no one important was watching." She met his eyes. "You failed that test." The next morning, leadership changes were announced. Temporary command reassignment. Mandatory review. Training restructuring. The colonel was escorted out of his office by noon. Elena returned to her original uniform by the end of the week. Her presence on base became quieter again, purposeful, focused. She spent time with junior officers, listening instead of lecturing. She spoke with enlisted leaders, asking what they needed instead of telling them what to do. Slowly, the culture shifted. On her final day, a young lieutenant approached her. "Ma'am," he said, hesitant, "why did you let him talk to you like that at first?" Elena smiled softly. "Because respect given freely reveals character," she said. "Respect demanded reveals insecurity." She left the base without ceremony. No speeches. No applause. Just impact. Power, she knew, did not need to announce itself. It only needed to be ready when the moment came. And sometimes, the strongest leaders were the ones who waited to be underestimated. What did this story make you feel? Where are you watching from? Subscribe to Soul Relief Stories for more real stories that heal the heart.